Hi y'all, it's Jamie with ColorFlutterCreations. I have been missing springtime in the Texas Hill Country, so we are making a floral card. I'm using the Trellis Background Die, this Ivy Leaves die, and the mini flowers die sets, all by Pixie Dust Designs. And don't you just love the layers of those mini flower dies? No cutting it out multiple times and then having to stack them and turn them to create the dimension. You're just running everything through once. I have cut out the trellis background twice out of white cardstock, and we are just gluing that together. And then you can also see I've already die cut all of the floral and ivy or leaf pieces that we are going to be using. Once I finished gluing the two trellis background pieces together, I'm just adding liquid adhesive onto the back of the combined trellis, and I'm going to place this onto a white card panel. This is a really great way to add depth to a background, especially if you want to keep a monochromatic kind of feel. However, we are not. I'm adding color. So I have some Squeeze Lemonade Distress ink and my waffle flower blending brush. This is a background blender brush, and this works really great to create this kind of halo effect. So I'm going right into the center of my card panel and then kind of blending outward. So of course it is darker in the middle. This is a really great technique to use on backgrounds like this because that ink is going to hit the raised layers first. It's going to make that the darkest element. So my card panel, which is behind the trellis, is still lighter, and that creates additional depth and dimension to this background. Let's just put that background aside. It just is going to stay the way it is, and let's get to inking all of our flowers. I'm starting off with the solid gold color, which is a metallic ink, and it is a Lisa Horton ink, which I love the shimmer and the shine. I am just putting this on the centers of our flowers. So those are the little centers that get die cut. And here's where you can really tell each of the different sizes of flowers and their shapes that come in this die set. I really do love the design of this. The first set of colors I'm using are Altenews Amber Blaze. This is what I'm putting down now on the largest flowers. Then I'm going to move to Golden Honeycomb for the middle size of the flowers. And then I'm going to top it off on the smallest size of the flower pattern with Ripe Mango, and that is the Lisa Horton Interference inks. I love them. And for the centers of flowers, it's perfect because it adds that shine and all that shimmer. And with the interference, you have that color shift. So it just even creates more interest. Now, I did not have any rhyme or reason as to which colors I was picking for my flowers, except to say that I did not want to do the same shape of flowers in all the same color. So I wanted to kind of mix that up. The next set of colors, I'm using Altenews Persian Blue and Caribbean Sky, and then topping them off with another Lisa Horton Interference ink, and that's the Teal Twist color. I really love this combination. That teal kind of makes everything pop just a little bit differently because the blue really kind of brings that green, of course, because it's teal, but it just does something with the two variations of the blue. I'm really mixing up my floral colors here. I'm really going with both cool colors and warm color tones. So, but this next set of flowers, I am using Altenew. Of course, the ultramarine is that real dark color. The middle color is hydrangea. And then I'm pulling in, again, another Lisa Horton Interference ink, but this is the crushed velvet. And it just has a beautiful color shift from a purple to gold. It's one of my absolute favorite colors in the interference line. I then move on to another set of the flowers and using some pinks here. So I really love the pinks of the Altenew. I'm using the Raspberry Sunset, dusty pink, and then I'm pulling in another interference ink, and it's in sunset pink. So some different shades of pink for these flowers. What? Did I just switch it up? I sure did. I'm pulling in some Hero Arts ink instead. Well, I love this color palette. It's light to red royal is the combination of it, and it's an ombre ink. And well, yes, it's wonderful to swipe across a page and get that ombre effect. You can also use each of the strips on their own. And I thought because they're already ready to be coordinated, because they did the work for me, why not just go ahead and use the three colors that are there? And isn't this amazing? Look at the center of this. Oh, awesome. I love the way these flowers look. And we move on to the leaves. So I have some different inks here. That first one that I put down is a Distress Oxide. It's the Mode Long color. And then I have two Distress inks. The darkest one all the way on the left there is Rustic Wilderness, and then the one in the middle is Cracked Pistachio. Can I say that? No, I can't. Anyway, I spritz those inks with water, kind of drag my fingers through it just in the middle to kind of blend it a little bit. And I'm just taking my die cut ivy leaves here and just dipping them. Literally just dipping them, getting some pieces with more white than others, going into different sections of the inks because you can see at the top it's a little lighter, and here I needed just a little more ink because, I need more ink. I need more of that color. Just re-spritz that area, drag your fingers, and there you go. Just play with, I don't know, dipping into the different colors, dragging through them with the cardstock. You're going to get a lot of variation in the colors of your leaves. And that's what we see in nature, right? Leaves aren't just one shade of green. There may be many color greens. I wanted to give even more interest and add a little more shine too. So I pulled out my bundled sage and mowed lawn distress spritz sprays, and I'm just kind of giving a few little drops on there. I'm not even like really pressing very hard. I just kind of want to get sporadic drops all over that. I use my heat tool to get my leaves really good and dry, and then I'm going to set them aside, and just look how cool that is. Very nice. I have this really cool sentiment, and it's from a Spellbinders Earth Laughs, I think is the name of the stamp and die set. And I just love the sentiment in general, but the style of this one, I really enjoy this. This is a pretty, I think, old stamp set, but it's just classic. I love it. So I've stamped that anyway in my Altenew Obsidian ink, and then I'm just putting clear embossing powder over it, and then I'm going to use my Wow Heat tool, and I'm going to melt that. And I don't know about y'all, but I love to watch the embossing powder just melt. I used the coordinating die to cut out my sentiment, and while I didn't show this, I die cut that sentiment again just on some white cardstock. I'm using liquid adhesive, and I'm going to smash these pieces together because I wanted to double up my sentiment. I wanted to have a little bit more thickness to it. We're going to start with our sentiment for building up our card. And I have a bunch of foam adhesive dots on the back of my sentiment, and you can see that I placed them kind of towards the center or middle of my sentiment. I wanted to leave some border around the edge of my sentiment so I had room to tuck all of my different elements. But before we do that, we need to finish layering up our flowers. So I wanted to add some depth to my flowers, a little bit more dimension, give some curvature to the leaves of some of these flowers. So I pulled out my Altenew Petal Shaper tool set, and it's this foam base, so it gives a little bit when you're pressing your tool onto your cardstock. The tools itself, as you can see, are double-sided, and each side has a different shape kind of ball, which this allows the ball or the tool to really kind of roll, even though it's not rolling, I don't know how to slide across your petals. And it doesn't take much pressure at all. So it's really simple, but it adds a bunch of additional depth and kind of shadow to each of the petal layers. So I'm adding a little bit of liquid adhesive to the largest of the flowers, and then I will place the middle size onto that and then use a little bit of liquid adhesive again to place the smallest size in the petal layers together. I then pull one of my metallic centers that we had die cut and inked up with that solid gold ink. I put a little dab of glue in the middle of the flower and then layer that center. And isn't that amazing? I know there's a little bit of shine there, and it is just absolutely fabulous. I repeat these steps over and over until I have all of my floral clusters finished. One thing you can do instead of adding that flower center is you could pull out some pops of color, stickles, gems, anything along those lines, and you could add that in the center instead. We can now move on to actually building up our card. So we already put our sentiment in the middle because that's exactly where I want it. But we need to tuck all of these different leaves and ivies and then place our flowers. So I'm just using the curvature of the different leaves and ivies to place them around my sentiment, tucking the ends underneath. I then use a little bit of liquid adhesive and kind of hold that down until it really starts to stick. Now, I don't use liquid adhesive over the entire back of the leaves or ivy pieces. I'm just doing them kind of here and there. Remember, one of the reasons that we left the edge around the sentiment is so that we could have space to tuck. The same kind of premise holds true when it comes to the ivies and the leaves. I may not want an entire leaf, so I'm going to snip it off, but I want to tuck that maybe behind another leaf or flower or something that I've already put onto my card panel. Just continue on through the process, adding in leaves and ivies and whatever elements that you want until it is the shape that you like. Now, I know that there's kind of this pattern or rule as we do in card making where you want to kind of draw the eye from one corner down to another or around in a shape and it flows through. But our real main focus is this big sentiment in the middle. So, with that said, I'm not really being very strategic. And I also like to play outside of the lines. I like to be outside of the box, as you know, and I don't like to play by rules either. So, I will do what I want to do, and I just implore you to do what you want to do as well. So just keep snipping and tucking and, adding all of those different leaves and ivies in whatever patterns that you want that look fun to you. It doesn't have to follow any rules at all. Once there is a good base layer of your leaves or ivies that is down, you can then move on to adding in your flowers. I'm just kind of tucking them where I want. A little bit may go underneath the sentiment, like I'm putting here, but then the rest, of course, is kind of popping out. So it looks like it's kind of coming from behind my sentiment. I also just play around with placement. Because each of these are a different color, I may like the blue being in one place over another place. I like the yellow being over to the right, and then that red being there. I mean, it really just depends. So I play around a lot with where do I want the colors? What is most pleasing and appealing to my eye? And then on some of the flowers, I'm even popping those up a little bit. So just a little bit of foam dot there. I added a little bit of adhesive just to make sure I have some really sticking goodness there because I don't want it to come off my card panel. And then I go ahead and just place down everything else. You can see I'm going back with more of the leaves and of the ivies to kind of fill in spaces using a scrap piece of cardstock with a little bit of glue on it to kind of run underneath some of the leaves. And that really kind of keeps things from blobbing and globbing out of the edges and getting everywhere because, I don't want that to happen. So a lot of times I will use with delicate and intricate die cuts like this, a little piece of cardstock with some glue on it. If you haven't tried that, I still highly recommend trying it. It's really a simple, easy trick that I have found has actually saved a lot of my projects. And then that finishes up the card. I pulled out a black card base, put some liquid adhesive onto the back of my card panel, and center that up. And then that finishes the first of 2 of our cards for this video. Using the same process as we did with our leaves, we're going to be doing this on our card panel for the second card. So I have Distress inks in Stormy Sky, Mermaid Lagoon, and Speckled Egg. I'm going to love the oxidation of these oxides colors on this card panel. And then my card panel itself is backed with double-sided adhesive. So why I did that, and I'll show it to you here, is because I wanted to make sure that it was already stuck because of the technique that we're going to be doing, which is an inlay technique. So I'm taking my card panel, and just like we did with our leaves, I'm just kind of placing that, dabbing that in various spots of the blue ink that I had spritzed with water and kind of semi-blended-ish with my fingers, just running that down. Now, I'm not looking for this entire card panel to be done. I want a lot of white space with the technique I'm doing, but I am bringing in some Uncharted Mariner Distress Stain and some Simon Hurley Solar Spray in Deep End. This is going to add a little more depth with that darker blue, as well as the shine from the Deep End. I love those solar sprays by Simon Hurley. And then just like we did with our leaves, we want to give this a really good dry with a heat tool. Hopefully you can see the shine that is here on this card panel. Again, it is very subtle because I only put a little bit, but I love the way that that turned out. So now I want to die cut this using the same trellis die that we did for our first card. So exact same process. Now I do run this through my die cutting machine a couple of different times because it has that adhesive backing on it. Now the die is not necessarily going to cut through the entire backing layer of the double-sided adhesive sheet, but that's okay. As long as it cuts through the entire cardstock piece, that is really what you want. When I pull this off of my die cutting machine platform, I'm just checking the back of it to make sure that it really did cut through the card panel here. So I'm pulling up, it's kind of hard to see, but I'm pulling up just kind of a edge of it and pulling it back to see how much of that actually got cut. Then I can take, once I know it's actually really cut through, I can start peeling that off of the die. And the reason why I say peeling is because I kind of want to peel it, but I also want to do this poking motion so I can keep all of the blue little bits that usually come out of the card panel. I want them to stay stuck. That's why we also used the double-sided adhesive sheet. I want to keep this, the trellis and the little bits that usually fall out, all together as one piece. And there you can see on the left our entire trellis piece that we just die cut out of that blue panel, but it is all intact. I did die cut a second trellis piece, and it is just in white cardstock, just like we did on our first card. I'm going to put this down onto a clean white card panel. This is not layered up though, so this is just die cut the trellis once, and that is what I'm putting onto the white card panel. We can then take our adhesive back trellis piece, which is the blue piece on the left, and we can start peeling away some of the centers of the trellis and inlaying them onto our white panel with the white trellis on it. And because it has adhesive already on the back of it, it makes it really easy. You're not having to deal with glue, and you literally just have to peel that away and then put it where you want it to in the center of the other trellis on the right. Now I did have to pull out my knife because my craft knife is going to help me get any of the pieces that didn't get cut by the die. Remember, we had this backed by a double adhesive sheet, and that makes it a little harder to die cut through. Not difficult, but I did have a few of them, I should say, not even very many, but I did have a few of them. I had to just kind of slice along the edge just in one or two little places, places. And you can see I'm just putting them sporadically across my card panel, some darker in some places, other lighter in other places. And then we have all of this left over, which keep it so you can do more cards. I'm using a sentiment from the Pink Fresh Studios Indigo Roses set. This has been out for quite some time. I don't even know if they still have it, but I will link to it in the description if it is still available. I just inked that on some plain white cardstock with my Altenew Obsidian ink. I put the clear embossing powder over that, and then I am going to heat set that embossing powder with my Wow Heat tool. Like I did with the first sentiment, I cut that out using the coordinating die, but I also cut it I think two more times and then layered those pieces together. I wanted to make sure, since this especially was a thinner sentiment, that it had some real dimension to it and support to it. We're going to do the same thing as we did before by just putting down our leaves and ivies first. I do place my sentiment where I know that I'm going to want it on my card panel, just so I know that it's not going to interfere with anything that I'm doing. I want to make sure that I'm not accidentally putting too many layers in this sentiment area that I don't want it. This leaf, by the way, that has the dual-ended leaves to it, I love this from the die set. Very, very smart. Look at this, just putting a little bit of liquid adhesive in the center and then one of the florals, and boom, already got a little bouquet. Florals coming out both sides. Absolutely love that. This is a truly smart die set. I really, really can't say it enough. I really do like this die set a lot. So while this is the same process as that first card, you can see how even using the same products, we've been able to switch things up using different leaves, using different leaf shapes, using different, types of the flowers, even doing the inlay. That is a big dramatic change from what we did on the first one. Going with a smaller sentiment is a change from then the first card. And even though, again, we're using the same types of product, we are having vastly different looks of our cards. And I really love how versatile this set is. And this wraps up our cards. So we use the Elegant Trellis Background Die, the Mini Flowers die set, and the Ivy Leaves, all by Pixie Dust from their new release. I still have this background that I can use for another card or probably multiple cards. And isn't this just amazing? I love how these turned out. Let me know in the comments which of these cards is your favorite and which technique you really liked the best. I truly appreciate you joining me. Please stay tuned for more crafty fun to be had in the future. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for supporting me by subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing this video.